Wonderful. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good afternoon and welcome to HRM's Transportation Standing Committee for August 29th. I'll get this meeting up and going here at 1 p.m. Before I do anything else, I just want to make sure that we do a roll call, check on everybody's audio. So I'd like to welcome our Vice Chair, Bertie.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Nice to be here.
Excellent. Thank you. And Councillor Way Mason, we have you here.
Too many screens. Yes, I'm here, Madam Chair.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Councillor Cleary, you are out and about in the wild.
Hello, coming to you live from Quebec City.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. We do have regrets today from Councillor Tim Outfit and Councillor Patty Cuddle may join us shortly. Hopefully she doesn't have issues connecting like I did. But in any event, I'll call the meeting to order. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. I also want to take this opportunity to point out we have a number of staff on the line today and a number of speakers that are joining us as well through public participation. We've got Trevor McDonald. Hey, Trevor, how are you?
Doing well. Thank you.
Perfect. Dave Rigi is joining us as well.
Good afternoon.
Hey, Dave. Patricia Hughes, I see, is on the line. Hey, Patricia. Good to see you. David McIsaac. Looks like we've got the A team here as well as Ed Surratt, Mark Neener, Krista Cumming, and Lucas Pitts. You're also here. Greg Parker, Dorothy, and Elizabeth McDonald from the clerk's office. So yeah, if each of you could just turn on your video and just say hello, just to make sure we don't have any audio or connectivity issues.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Excellent. Thanks, Mark.
Afternoon.
Thank you, Ed.
Good afternoon.
There you go. Thank you, Lucas. Okay, perfect. And I'll just ask everybody if you're not speaking, please mute. And that way we can get through this without any issues. Councillors, the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is approve the minutes of July 25th, 2024.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Purdy. Do you have a seconder, please?
Second, Councillor Cleary.
Excellent. So no issues with the minutes of July 25th. So I'll ask that we pass that, please. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? No opposed. That motion carries. So we're going to jump over to approval of order of business and approval of additions and deletions. I believe we do have a deletion, Madam Clerk.
We do. The external presentation from Milena, item 10.3.1. They have written the clerk's office and asked to withdraw their presentation request at this time. So it is proposed for deletion today.
Okay, thank you. Are there any additions, Council? Do you have any additions to add? Oh, and I do see Councillor Cuddle has joined us as well. Thank you. If you could just turn on your audio and make sure that we can hear you okay.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Okay, perfect. So can I have a motion, please, to approve the order of agenda with that one deleted item?
I'll move that.
Actually, prior to this meeting, because of the fact, sorry about that, Councillor Cuddle, just hang on to that mover. Wondering whether or not we could move up public participation. We do have a number of people on the line that want to speak. Rather than all of those folks hanging around till the end of the meeting, it might be helpful to get those speakers up and running sooner in the agenda if there is a will of this committee to do so.
I believe public participation would be prior to all the other staff reports, so 13.1.1. It would just come after correspondence, I believe.
Right, and now we've moved. We do have that deletion from 3.1. Okay, great. So Councillor Cuddle, over to you to move. Do we have a seconder?
I'll move it.
Councillor Purdy has seconded. Perfect. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Great, that motion has carried. Thanks so much for that clarification, Madam Clerk. Business arising out of the minutes, there are none, and motions of reconsideration, none. Motions of rescission, none. The consideration of deferred business, there is none, and notices of tabled matters, there's none. Correspondence, petitions, and delegations, Madam Clerk, what have you got?
Correspondence has been received for 10.3.1, as well as 13.1.1, and has been distributed to the standing committee. There are no petitions received from the clerk's office.
Thank you. Colleagues, do you have any petitions to table today? No, and there are no presentations as that matter has been removed from our agenda, so we will move over to public participation. And in order to speak during the public participation, members of the public needed to contact the municipal clerk's office no later than 4:30 on August the 28th to be added to the speakers list to speak today. Krista is going to manage the speakers list, I believe, to make sure that we get you in so that you can speak, and you will have 5 minutes. The clerk will announce when you have 30 seconds left, just to kind of give you a heads up that you only have 30 seconds left, and would ask that you please keep your comments directed at the chair, keep them respectful, and look forward to hearing from each of you. Our first speaker today is Peter Sonicson. Peter, are you with us?
Might just take a moment for them to be promoted to panelist.
Oh, there you, I do see Peter has joined.
Looks like he's good to go. Peter, if you're able to unmute yourself and turn on your camera.
Is it, oh, wait,
There we go.
are you able to hear me?
Yes, we are.
Okay, when would you like me to begin?
You're good now. Just a note that I will give you've got, the chair had indicated speakers will have 5 minutes, but I'll give a warning at the 30-second mark.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I'm Peter Sonicson, and I will begin. As a retired RCMP officer with over 30 years of service, I've seen firsthand how vital every second can be in an emergency. Based on my background, I was asked to speak to emergency response and emergency preparedness in relation to the proposed Halifax Urban Greenway multi-use pathway on Lower Cobourg Road. The proposed new pathway is an admirable initiative. If we could do what Vancouver, Ottawa, and Montreal has accomplished, it would significantly add to our community. However, while the benefits of increased cycling infrastructure are clear, it is also our duty to carefully consider the potential impacts of public safety, particularly when it comes to emergency response times. Navigating a small emergency vehicle through normal traffic is already a challenge. I can hardly imagine what it would be like for a larger emergency vehicle to navigate the Cobourg Road bottleneck. What most people don't consider when they think about emergency vehicle response is that emergency responders are not the only ones racing to the scene. Often people think of evacuation, but in this area, packed with children, the reality is quite different. For every child, there'll be likely 1 or 2 parents rushing to the scene. Because in today's world, with texts and social media, parents often learn about emergencies sooner than authorities. This influx of anxious parents will create additional traffic, further complicating the efforts of emergency responders and increasing the potential for dangerous situations. There has already been considerable discussion about increased risk to this area in relation to the pathway construction and the narrowing of the road. In general, police and fire department are not consulted pre-construction. There generally isn't the expertise from emergency services, nor the political will from governing bodies to prioritize these concerns during the planning stages. If such consultations were standard, every school would be designed with active shooters in mind, ensuring there are no hidden pockets in hallways where a shooter could barricade. But this kind of foresight is often lacking, which underscores the importance of today integrating now emergency services input into this project. Throughout my career, I was involved in emergency preparedness, specifically through training and crisis response, utilizing the Incident Command System, ICS, the international language of emergency preparedness and response. One example is during the 9/11 crisis. With 28 planes on the runway, I developed and implemented the first ICS operational plan for airport policing at Vancouver International Airport. At the time, it became a national model for airports across Canada. Another example relates locally and recently. The floods in HRM. River Lane in Bedford was flooded, and my sister called. Police and fire reported they could not get to them. I traveled from Halifax and went through the woods on foot and guided the residents to evacuation. These experiences underscore my concerns today concerning the importance of having a robust, well-coordinated emergency plan and response, especially in the areas where public safety is at stake. Let me emphasize that multi-agency training exercises are a mandatory key component. Where do plans come from? Risk assessment. The Hazard Risk Vulnerability Assessment, HRVA, utilized by HRM to assess risk, measures risk district-wide. So that will be the entire District 7. It is in its development. This suggests a risk assessment has never been completed in this area. I cannot stress enough the importance of conducting a risk assessment in this area. This is not just any stretch of road. It's a critical bottleneck shared by a significant number of residents, the synagogue, the Wegwaltic Club, a care home, Dalhousie University, and Armbray School. Few residential districts in the Halifax municipality have so much happening in such limited space. The high concentration of activity means the stakes are even higher when it comes to ensuring quick and effective response. Risk assessments are not just a bureaucratic exercise, they are essential tools. I believe it is in closing, I believe it is imperative we strike a balance between fostering a bike-friendly environment and maintaining the swift response capabilities of our emergency services. This is not just choosing one over the other,
Time.
but finding a solution that ensures the safety of all citizens. Thank you.
Just to note, Councillor Lovelace is having some internet issues, and she's asked Councillor Purdy if she could take over as chair.
Yep, absolutely. I have the agenda here. Next, okay, thank you, Peter. Next on our list, we have Dr. Maggie Bernard, for our public participant. Is she?
Yes,
promoted?
I am here. Can
Oh,
you hear me?
wonderful. Yes, I can. Thank you, Dr. Bernard. So you have 5 minutes, and our clerk will let you know when your 30 seconds is up.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Magda Bernard, and I represent the concerned residents and neighbors of Coburg Road in Halifax. Coburg Road from Oxford Street down to the bottom of the hill is a dead-end road. It has 2 residential roads that feed into it below the CN Bridge, Thornvale Avenue and Birchdale Avenue. Thornvale Avenue ends in a private road, and Birchdale Avenue is a dead-end road. Lower Coburg Road from Oxford Street down to the end has Haven Manor Residential Care Facility, the Armbray Academy Coburg Campus, Beth Israel Synagogue, the Wegwaltic Club, and several private residences. The road has gotten much busier with traffic in the last few years because the Wegwaltic Club has begun to offer day camps to hundreds of children per day, and the Armbray School Coburg Campus moved to this road. We're happy as residents to have these changes, and there are no issues there. Where the issue arises is that we are informed by the city without a proper consultation process and without input from residents that the city plans to narrow Coburg Road from CN Bridge to Oxford Street, rip up a sidewalk on the south side of the road to install the multi-use path based on an outdated plan from 2018. This multi-use path will terminate in a sidewalk on each end. The narrowing of this section of Coburg Road in width will be over 4 feet, which will completely wipe out a road lane. This is based on an urban greenway plan from 2018 before the changes I just detailed significantly increased traffic on this section of the road. Furthermore, additional growth is anticipated on the road as the zoning has changed to an E3 this past year to allow for an increase in population density. This city is comparing the final width of Coburg Road after the road narrowing to the road width of Grant and Stanhope of Tower Road that are small residential side streets. And one of these streets does not even have a stop sign, while Coburg Road has 4-way light intersection at Coburg and Oxford, and non-comparable volumes of traffic and 2 avenues that feed into it. As a doctor who for years owned and ran 2 busy clinics and adhered very strongly to emergency protocols, I can vouch for how important response time is in an emergency situation. We have a plastic surgeon, a maxillofacial surgeon on this road, plus 2 pediatric specialists and a pediatric emergency room physician on one of the avenues mentioned above that feed into this section of Coburg Road. Not only does emergency services need to make it to residents, the school, the Wegwaltic Club, the synagogue, and the Haven Manor Care Facility, but the doctors also need to be able to get to patient emergencies in a timely manner and be able to leave their residences. Additionally, the Tantallon wildfires of last year remind us that we all need to have an evacuation route. Narrowing of the road hinders all of the above. Narrowing this road by over 4 feet will reduce this dead-end road to 2 lanes. Currently, the city plans to have 1 lane for traffic and 1 shared parking lane. As the road is narrowed and is confirmed to be narrowed to 2 lanes, traffic from the Wegwaltic Club and the school can significantly back up on this road. As it is at rush hour traffic, the traffic is busy in both directions during the whole year. What happens when it's down to 2 lanes? Way Mason suggested that people need to bike to the Wegwaltic Club and the school, but this is not feasible since people come from all over the city to drop children off at the Wegwaltic Club and to the Armdale Bray Academy. Then they need to get to work on time. If the parking stopping lane is removed, where will delivery vehicles go? Where will the garbage truck go? Oil delivery, these vehicles still need to stop and are permitted to do so, and this will turn a dead-end road into 1 lane. How about access after a snowstorm when snow piles up? The Wegwaltic has a new clubhouse built that is starting in 2025. How will large construction trucks not hold up traffic when the road is narrowed like this? As it is with the current road width, during the Wegwaltic clubhouse fire, approximately a year and a half ago, it is known that a delivery truck held up fire truck access and delayed response. What will happen when there's no lane to pull into? In conclusion, I would like to quote the Upper Tantallon Lessons Learned Report, Halifax Regional Council, item 5 from 2023. The scarcity of evacuation routes out of affected communities and for residents impacted by the situation. Many found themselves trapped behind lines of fire lines or caught in traffic congestion while attempting to flee their neighborhoods. Please request a stop work order to pause this project to consider our significant safety concerns, and don't let that happen here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bernard. Thank you. Next, we have on our list Todd Bernard.
Hello, right here.
Hello, Todd. Welcome. You have
Thank you.
5 minutes to speak, and our clerk will let you know when you have 30 seconds left.
Thank you very much. It would appear that a lot of the issues that have been put forward to council over the last period of time.
Just a moment.
Sorry.
If you're able to turn on your camera.
Oh, sure. Sorry, there we go. Hi.
There we go.
Better? Yeah. Okay. Anyway, a lot of the issues have already been brought up in front of council by previous speakers, Peter and Dr. Bernard. I think the additional issues besides the narrowing of the road, which clearly is going to impact the emergency vehicle response here, there's no question about it. And it's also going to be compounded once the snow falls and we have snowbanks on both sides. It's going to make it significantly worse. The other aspect to this is that currently this is a relatively quiet. We keep talking about the volume of traffic, but this is slow traffic. This is people dropping their kids off and then going very, very slowly up the street. So this is a quiet neighborhood. It's not a cyclist dangerous neighborhood. Adding in the MUP coming up against the driveways, the active driveways of the residents on this side is going to change that whole prospect. 3 of the 5 driveways here will exit into this with no buffer zone, and 3 of the 5 have limited visibility upon exiting. So at some point, somebody's going to plow into the side of a vehicle, and this is going to be unacceptable. Currently, it's not going to happen. The number of cyclists on the street, if you see 12 cyclists going somewhere on the street in the run of a day, it's a busy day. And they're on the street, safely on the street. They're not driving down the sidewalk. They're not going to run to the side of your car. I've just never seen it happen. What we need to emphasize here is that whether it's government or in business, whatever the case is, when you have a plan and the flaws in the plan are being brought forward, the people that have the ability to reassess that plan need to take the responsibility and do it. They need to sit back and say, hey, these are valid concerns, and we can't just keep moving forward without taking the time to properly address these, reevaluate the situation, because as has been said before, we're dealing with an antiquated plan. This plan occurred ages ago, and the changes in the neighborhood are significant enough that this needs to be reassessed. The final side of this is because it's a very quiet cyclist street, a very quiet residential street, the simple financial outlay to create a bike lane where there really is no need for a bike lane is just an absolute blatant waste of taxpayers' dollars, our dollars. So that's pretty much the extent of what I have to add to this. I just feel very strongly that the city needs to, the councillors need to sit back and say, we have to look at this far more closely once again, because you've been brought, the issues have been brought to your attention. It's time to sit back and say, we have to consider scrapping this plan, adjusting this plan, at the very least, reassessing this plan and starting from new. Thank you guys very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Bernard. I do not see, oh, sorry, Councillor Purdy, you have a question. Mr. Bernard, are you still there?
Yep, still here.
Okay, excellent. Councillor Purdy has a question for you. Go ahead, Councillor.
Yes.
Well, actually, it's a question about what the speakers have been speaking about, and I guess it's more for our clerk or our legal. Am I able to ask staff about what these, Way is shaking his head.
Not at this time, Councillor. If you have a question for Mr. Bernard specifically, you can absolutely for a clarification question for Mr. Bernard in what he presented.
Okay, at what point of the meeting then? Is there a place in the meeting where this can be addressed?
Let's park that, and we'll move on to our next speaker.
Okay.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, can you please, thank you, Mr. Bernard. Can you bring in Robin McAdam, please? There's Robin. Excellent. Thank you, Robin. Thanks for joining us today. Go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you folks. I'll be very brief. I live at, can barely talk apparently. I live at 6471 Coburg Road, which is 2 houses east of the railway tracks and on the north side of the street. My neighbors, Tony Gillis, Maggie Bernard, and George Way, have already made very articulate, thoughtful, written submissions to this committee. They're well done. I fully support them, and I don't need to repeat all of the excellent points that they've made. The multi-use trail is an interesting challenge for us. We all appreciate the long-term vision of being able to cycle from the Rotary to Point Pleasant Park. This is very laudable. Unfortunately, this seems to be one of those situations where something that sounds excellent in theory will be problematic, in fact, less safe in practice if the design is wrong. But there has to be a way to design this thing so that it doesn't make our street less safe for cyclists and pedestrians. I'm sure we can find a design that meets everyone's objectives if we take a pause and work at it a bit. And that's what we're all encouraging this committee to do. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you for that. I don't see any questions of clarification for you. I just apologize for losing my internet there. I am back, but Madam Clerk, just to confirm, Mr. Way next on the list? Yes.
That's correct, George Way.
Way.
Can you hear me, Chair?
Hi, Mr. Way. Yes, absolutely. Thank you for joining us today. You have 5 minutes, and Krista will give you a 30-second heads up when you've got 30 seconds left. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. My name is George Way, spouse of Margaret Way. We have been the property owners and the residents at 6449 Cobourg Road for 40 years. We realize that Cobourg Road is owned by HRM. However, we have been residents of and residential users of the road for 40 years and have paid residential property taxes in excess of approximately $300,000 and believe we have certain acquired rights to the road's use and a right to be properly consulted on any significant changes to the road's use. We believe and are concerned that the process for approving the planned construction of a multi-use path or MUP on this block has not respected these rights or wishes. HRM's communications of its intentions have been largely passive over a period of more than 10 years, with a one-page mailing in the spring of 2024, followed by a doorknob notice days before commencement of the Halifax Water Project, with which HRM connected and embedded the MUP project. Once the property owners and others became aware of the pending project in mid-July, they immediately reached out to HRM's elected officials and staff to express their concerns, asking for information and dialogue to address their concerns. HRM's response since then has been largely dismissive, emphasizing that nothing can be done because the project is under contract. We understand that 100% with only one abstention of the effective residential property owners on the block have expressed their concerns to HRM and believe that the MUP construction should be delayed until a proper communication and approval process takes place. Although we cannot speak for the institutional property owners, we further understand that members of management of the institutions on the block have expressed the same and other concerns. This includes the Beth Israel Synagogue, Armory Academy, and the Wade Baltic Club. The principal concerns with the MUP that could have been properly discussed if HRM had properly involved the residents in a timely and effective manner include the following: the narrowing of the road by approximately 4 feet above the rail bridge. Secondly, the impact on and likely elimination of the ability to park on the south side of the road. Third, the impact of the above on west and eastbound traffic movement on this dead-end road and the very busy Cobourg and Oxford Road intersection, which is already challenged. 4, the apparent non-consideration of the impact of changes to the road's use and traffic over the past 5 or more years, particularly related to the institutional properties. 5, the non-consideration of a feasible alternate option of a properly designed bike lane to meet HRM's objectives. 6, the impact on the ability for necessary large vehicles to use the road, particularly during high traffic periods. 7, a likely better alternate use for the federal funds that we understand are significantly funding the MUP. 8, the impact on the ability of emergency vehicles to obtain necessary road access and use, particularly during high traffic periods. 9, a deferral of the MUP and related decisions and options till other and more major portions of the HRM desired transportation, bike and similar routes are addressed. 10, the unwillingness of HRM to facilitate a meeting with the impacted property owners and residents. 11, the potentially negative impact on existing property values. And lastly, the district councilor's, Waymason's dismissive approach, unavailability, and lack of effective interest or respect for the
Point of
concern.
order. Please don't, I would ask the chair to confirm that speakers should not ascribe motives or intent. And I would remind the speaker that they engaged a lawyer and they were communicating with HRM's lawyers at that time.
So
I'm more than happy to be with them now.
Thank you, Mr. Counselor Waymason. Yes, Mr. Way, and I apologize. Again, clerk, I'm having issues with Zoom today, so not able to click. I'm not sure what's happening here. Mr. Way, please keep your comments respectful. I'm not sure what your time is at this point. Madam
50
Clerk?
seconds remaining.
Thank you. Mr. Way, do you have further comments?
The only comment I would make, Chair, is I've provided through the clerk's office written comments that I've spoken to here, and I'll try not to be as dismissive of others as others have been to the property owners on Coburg Road. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Way, and your public participation here today. I do not see any questions of clarification for you, so thanks for being here. We are going to move on to our next speaker, who I think is also having connectivity problems. Colin, are you with us?
So Colin May, we are trying to promote you. It looks like you're coming in as a panelist now. If you could just turn on your microphone and your camera.
Colin, we just need you to unmute to make sure that you can hear us. There we go. You're
I've unmuted. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
As long as you can hear. Oh, you can't see me. Oh, well, I'll just speak, if that's okay with you. Oh, start video?
Yeah, I guess
I've clicked to ask you to start your video if you're able to accept that.
There we go. Well done. Okay, thank you.
Oh, here I am.
Okay, we're all set.
Excellent, Colin. You've got 5 minutes. Thank you so much.
Councillor Mason will be very familiar with what I'm about to say. I live on Delia Street. I'm approximately 100 yards from the entrance gates to the Dartmouth Common. As Councillor Mason knows, as does my Councillor Austin knows, that the HRM Charter, Section 66, relates specifically to the Dartmouth Common. It says in there, if I go to section 66(6), subsection 6C, pedestrian priority, safe and comfortable pedestrian circulation. That does not exist. I sent the clerk a photograph of a 500, the man said it was 500 cc's. I think he meant a 500 watt scooter going through the park. The number of cyclists on electric bikes has increased. The number of people on large electric scooters has increased. I'm not the only person in the area concerned about, can you still hear me?
Craig, you have shared your screen. Could you please unshare your screen?
Yeah, he's sharing the picture that Colin had shared. Sorry.
That's the picture. Thank you. Apologies, Colin. Go ahead.
That scooter is the photograph is a couple of days old. Look how the person is dressed. He's going into a public walkway on a common. He could not go in public gardens, but he can go in the Dartmouth Common. Now, I'm at the end of my tether, quite frankly, after all these years of putting up with this. I've seen mothers with children under school age, and I've said to them, did you hear the bell ring there? No. I've got elderly people. They don't ring, saying cyclists don't ring the bells. It is my position that cyclists have no right to be in the Dartmouth Common, no legislated right to be in there at all, by virtue of section 66 of the HRM Charter. Councillor Mason was at a recent regional centre community council meeting, and I suggested that I explained the problems that I and others were having. I suggested that a committee, that a staff committee be formed to address the issues of concern to pedestrians in Dartmouth Common. I've heard nothing. I've heard nothing from my councillor. So what am I left to do? Nothing. Nothing. Although I could, I don't have the money to hire a lawyer to force this issue and to stop what's going on in there. It appears that my councillor, and park staff, I've had park staff in the Commons walking around showing them what a mess it is from something else. I've told them about the dangers to see, particularly to seniors, because there's a seniors building right next to the Common. And yet I might as well talk Swahili, quite frankly. I'm getting nowhere. And so my suggestion is 10 days. Within 10 days, staff form a committee, meet with residents, listen to the concerns, walk through the park and see the dangers posed to pedestrians by cyclists and people on scooters. If that doesn't, 10 days, that I know we've got 3 days for a weekend plus Labor Day, 7 days. That's perfectly adequate for the staff to do something, to meet with residents, to come up with solutions. My personal solution is, if I had the money, I'd just hire a lawyer and I'd say, there is cyclists and scooter riders have no legal right to be in the Dartmouth Common. They're not even allowed in public gardens. You can't jog in public gardens. I don't know where that authority comes from, but it says in there, no jogging, no running, no
30
scooters.
seconds.
So I think you can sense my frustration. I'm 80 in January. I'll just say one last thing. The reason why I walk every day, and Councillor Mason knows the reason, is that when dismounting on a bike in British Columbia 6 years ago, I fell, broke my hip, and was in Lionsgate Hospital in North Vancouver for 12 days. And only through the wonderful staff and surgeons did I survive. And I have no intention of anybody, cyclist or scooter rider, hitting me in the park. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. May, and happy early birthday. It's a big one. Yes. But thank you for your comments. Appreciate your public participation today. We do not have any questions from councillors, so we will move on to our next speaker. And our next speaker is Tony Gillis. Tony, are you with us? Oh, I see Tony. That's a good sign. Hi, Tony. We'll just get you to unmute, please. You've got 5 minutes to speak, and there you go. You're unmuted. And Krista will let you know when there's 30 seconds left. Thank you, Mr. Gillis. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Transportation Committee. I'm speaking today regarding the Coburg Road multi-use pathway project. I'm a resident of Coburg Road, adjacent to the pathway that's presently under contract to be constructed between Conrose Park and Oxford Street. I'm also a lifelong Halifax cyclist. And just to try to trump Mr. Way, our family's been on Coburg Road since 1927. The Coburg MUP is part of a connector between Conrose and Beaufort MUPs that are supposed together to provide a lengthy greenway, which as previously stated, I also agree is a great idea. The proposed Coburg MUP is a fundamentally unsafe and completely unnecessary proposal, however. I've looked for evidence supporting my belief that the selection of an MUP for this location is inappropriate. For review, here are its characteristics. The path is parallel to the street and very close to it. It's steeply sloped in one section. And despite being short, it's crossed by 7 driveways, 5 serving individual dwellings and 2 serving institutions, one of them a day school for which no loading zones for student drop-off and pickup are proposed, despite significant street narrowing being required to permit the fitting in of this MUP. Also, it does not provide alternative or improved access between two distinct destinations, and consequently is of very limited practical value. In a survey of pertinent articles about bicycle infrastructure, I found that some of the best practices and guidelines for the design of multi-use pathways have been published in the United States. North Carolina Department of Transportation's document, Bicycle Facilities Guide, Types of Bicycle Accommodations, is one of them. Here are selected excerpts for your consideration. Defines a multi-use pathway as a physically separated from motor vehicle traffic and may include bicycle paths, rail trails, or other facilities built for bicycle and pedestrian traffic. When to consider this type of facility? MUPs must have adequate width for two-way use by both bicycles and pedestrians, avoidance of steep grades, and minimal cross-flow by motor vehicles, among other characteristics. They should not be placed, quote, immediately adjacent to a roadway because of safety considerations at intersections with driveways and roads. The bicyclist, and I continue to quote, the bicyclist and motorist each believes that he or she has right of way. The result can be a bicycle motor vehicle collision. Studies have shown that such parallel multi-use pathways are approximately twice as dangerous for bicyclists as riding in traffic with motor vehicles. The Coburg MUP presents precisely this danger. Additionally, as it has mushroomed since this project was planned, the e-bike scooter factor should be considered. Speeds of these personal transport devices are, as we all know, shocking. This fact can only worsen the potential for car-cycle incidents, but make pedestrian life on MUPs really hazardous. In fact, e-bike and scooter incidents are causing a meteoric rise in cycle accidents worldwide as jurisdictions struggle to regulate and enforce speed limit, age limits, and licensing that fairly reflect the challenges these micro vehicles are presenting for cities. What these mean for Canadian cities and multi-use pathways is addressed in the 2021 editorial in Focus on Victoria entitled, quote, startled pedestrians and cowboy cyclists may not be a good mix, end quote. In this article, author Stephen Hume, age 75, gives an account of an alarming personal encounter with a speeding e-biker while he walked a local MUP. Upon research, he discovered that problems are occurring widely as the elderly, often hearing impaired and requiring walking as a primary low-impact, low-cost exercise, are increasingly uneasy using MUPs. He cites a study from Australia that suggests there may be as many as 50 near misses for every reported collision between a cyclist and a pedestrian. I think recent experience on our own sidewalks and pathways would support
30
that.
seconds.
As reflected in the North Carolina statement, the underlying problem produced by separating bikes and scooters in dedicated lanes from other road users is that each group develops a false sense of autonomy. I've been caught off twice on Hollis Street by right turners who had not noticed me rolling parallel to them in a bike lane. The situation on MUPs is still more complex as the purpose of different users, from commuting to family recreation to a leisurely stroll, results in different styles of use.
That's time.
Thank you, Mr. Gillis.
Neighborhood streets should be left as they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gillis. I do not see any questions of clarification for you from our counselors. So thanks for being here today. And we're going to move to our next speaker, speaker number 8. That is Laura White. Laura, we can see you. We just need you to unmute and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks for having me. Kind of threw this together, so we'll see what comes out of my mouth. It's been great to hear about the Coburg Road issue. It kind of leads into what I'm going to talk about, which is more the University Morris bike lane that's on your agenda. So I'm Laura White. I'm speaking as someone who cycles and walks mostly to get around town. And also I'm running for council in District 7. So I've had a lot of feedback from speaking to people about how they feel about bike lanes. And I would say the majority of those are favorable and would like to see more infrastructure, but there are a lot of people that feel very strongly that they're not working. And I would say that's kind of for three reasons. Is the e-scooter, different speeds, interactions, like so many seniors are being scared and whatnot. So having people at different speeds together. There's the perception that they're not used enough. They're not by cyclists. And then the third one is just that we have traffic congestion, and why do we have bike lanes? So what I'm concerned about, or want to talk in favor of with doing these new bike lanes on University and Morris and whatnot, is that we make sure we do a really good job, because we want them to be used and appreciated by everyone. So I will go through a few things I had on my mind. Number one is that unidirectional bike lanes are a preference to decrease these kind of interactions of people going back and forth at different speeds. I would say that's preferred over the two-way bike options. Number two, I want to talk about is just preserving green space, like using the median there and Dal and by the hospital. I just know that we're so short on green space, and I'm concerned maybe about taking space away there when we could be using the road space that's all there. It maybe would be more comfortable giving up some parking than giving up green space. Also regarding trees, same thing. I would want to protect trees and green space over parking, but also I've heard a lot from residents about where we need parking for vendors when they're visiting their house and for accessibility. So definitely keeping that in mind, but really prioritizing people walking, people cycling over driving. Next thing I just saw in some of the drafts was a lot of in existing lanes that we have built in is that you're up on a raised path and then you need to come down into the street to cross. And a lot of those crossings are quite bumpy, like with the concrete. And I would ask the question if we could be doing some raised crosswalks and raised bikeways so that introduces a bit of a speed table for drivers crossing and shows the priority to cycling and walking in the case of crosswalks. Same thing on that thread would be protected intersections and raised full intersections. One thing I wanted to bring up with considering the part of the path that would be on local street bikeway, the part where I like to cross on South Street is at Edward and Davis, where they almost line up. And I was wondering if that had been considered, and if we just had somewhere there to make it across South Street. I like that grade, and maybe a raised intersection there could be an option. Yeah, those are pretty much all the topics I wanted to raise. And just that if we're looking for a modal shift, I don't think we should be afraid to invest the money up front and make the best choices that will make these paths usable and desirable by people and encourage a modal shift, and also get over that perception that the lanes are not used, encourage more people to use them and feel safe. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for your presentation today, Laura. I do not see any questions for you, so thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
We next have Sue Utek. Sue, you know the drill, former counselor for HRM. Great to see you.
I do. Thank you.
Thanks for being here today. Go ahead. You've got 5 minutes.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everyone. I'm Sue Utek. I'm the head of the Spring Garden Area Business Association, and I'm here to speak on item 13.1.1. I'm asking you to defer this so the public can understand the implications of this 75+ page report. Spring Garden received an email at approximately 3:54 p.m. yesterday afternoon to notify that this meeting was on tomorrow. I happen to be aware of this meeting because some of us know how City Hall works. I had to stop, drop, and notify with less than 30 minutes the clerk's office to which that I was being allowed to speak. And unfortunately for the clerk, I didn't get the notice that I was going to be allowed to speak until 11 this morning. The lack of communication in this in this project is becoming to the point that it's unprofessional and somewhat disrespectful. And I mean that with all sincerity. This means that my members in the Spring Garden area have no idea what's happening. I've had zero time to gather feedback. So in reading through the report, you were turning Spring Garden into a bus-only transit corridor on the assumption that council will accept an upcoming and now 3-time delayed report that's had little notification to Spring Garden with respect to public consultation. You have no idea the cost of the next trial phase of making Spring Garden into a bus-only pilot project, but here you are today about to approve this project 13.1.1. What does that mean for Spring Garden? Spring Garden, the bus-only trial was, quote, from the staff report, bus only for an enhanced pedestrian experience. We already have 850 bus trips a day down Spring Garden. Now we're going to have 9 additional express routes along with the 850. How is that more appealing to anyone is beyond me. You say that Morris Street will no longer be a truck route, but Inglis will become 24/7. I see nowhere in the report that the Port of Halifax thinks that this is feasible and has agreed to it. With the Spring Garden street revitalization, the onwaying of many streets especially Dresden and Birmingham are now one-way streets. Staff says they can handle more traffic. Come here any day. It defies logic that they can handle any more traffic. Birmingham often is backed up to the top of Artillery Place because of the changes there. My next point would be, under this proposal that Morris Street will be turned into a one-way street, Spring Garden will not have the ability to close for any events in the future. And even our 25-year plus signature Shopping Under the Stars will have to be reinvented. Please confirm from staff when you're meeting on this issue that this will be the case. You have just spent $12 million to attract folks to the area and essentially are spending 8.2 to drive them away. Secondly, another point that I know is in the business world, and I reached out to talk to some developers yesterday, a 35% contingency as estimated by staff would be seen as pie in the sky, and we really don't know the cost kind of that statement. As one developer said, I'll take your 35% because that will be my bid. 15% is the industry standard when design work has been done. So the other point, and I don't know, and I think we all don't know, with the current encampment on University Avenue that was to have 6 tents is now home to 45 and reaching up to University Avenue on the Dalhousie periphery. So what is the plan if this plan goes ahead? Construction starts next year. Where are we moving these people? Back to Victoria Park? So again, I'm asking the committee to defer this to give us time to absorb this report and get it out to our membership so they understand the implications of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Appreciate you being here. I don't see any comments or clarification questions. So we're going to move on to our final speaker who's signed up, and that is Andrea Hilchey-Pye. Andrea, are you here? Oh, I do see you. So we just need to get you promoted and unmuted.
Hi, everyone. How are you today?
Hi, go ahead, Andrea. You have 5 minutes.
One moment. Okay, I'm just bringing up my notes here. Sorry. First, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I would like to discuss the importance of making change work for everyone by listening, by learning, and then making adjustments. I won't spend much time on the concerns related to the Cobourg Road, as so many of you have brought forward those concerns. Thank you for taking time to bring these forward. Today, I want to focus on the upcoming recommendations for the implementation of the Peninsula South Complete Streets. I have biked along the proposed corridors numerous times, so I'm familiar with the proposed areas for the changes. The proposed changes are significant for District 7, and with this comes both opportunities and challenges. Residents are concerned about how it will impact them, as well as the potential of old growth trees being lost, as well as lost green space. In the report that you presented today from 2019 to 2022, you have undertaken a significant engagement process. However, if we can learn anything about change and the recent changes underway along Cobourg Road, where residents have identified key concerns around safety, it is the importance of not only engaging early, which you have done, but also to engage often and directly And Sue has just spoken about the lack of engagement of the Spring Garden Road Association. And as I hear at the doorsteps many times, the importance from residents are being consulted, heard, and involved all along the whole process about any changes. As this becomes closer to reality, giving residents and those directly impacted an opportunity to be heard and an opportunity for the committee and planning to reflect on those changes and look for opportunities for improvements will go a long way in the success of such a huge, complex project. Having led complex change projects through my career, this active engagement will serve everyone well in the project's long-term success. I ask that you add to those recommendations an active engagement strategy for those groups I mentioned, the residents, the Spring Garden Road Association, probably hospital staff, patients and families, the St. Mary's School staff and families, that are all going to be directed by this change. And that would include by reaching out directly to them with detailed timelines, plans for their feedback before proceeding, as well as throughout the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you for your presentation. I do not see any questions of clarification for you. So I will move to close public participation, although I don't know if we have anybody else waiting in the wings, Madam Clerk.
No.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks everyone for joining us today to speak and offer your insight. We sincerely appreciate it. I'm going to move on to item number 12, information items brought forward. There are none. Item 13.1.1, we do have a staff report today, implementation of Peninsula South Complete Streets, University Avenue, and the West and East connections. We have Mark Neener, who does have a presentation to give us. I just want to let committee know that I continue to experience internet issues. So I may dip out, and in that case, I will defer to our Vice Chair, Councillor Purdy, to take over the meeting. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, well, that's good. Mark, let's throw it over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just open my presentation. Can everyone see my my first slide, the title slide?
Not
oh wait,
yet.
no, I have.
No,
Sorry, 1 second.
that's okay.
It looks like you're sharing your screen.
I forgot to share my screen.
Okay. Okay, so Mark, we see the PowerPoint. You just need to make it full screen and we should be good to go.
Oh, you're seeing my desktop. Sorry. 1 moment, please. Let's try that again.
When you go to share, it should give you an option for PowerPoint versus the particular screen that you're sharing from.
Okay.
And if you select PowerPoint, that will allow you to still see your working notes as well as show it in full view.
That would be under the window tab.
Yeah, if you have any, if you'd like, we can certainly share the presentation on your behalf and you can just say next slide.
Okay, let me give this one more try. Okay, I think we better go with your option then.
Okay.
If you share the presentation.
Yep, just give us a moment. Craig will have that up. There you go.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So my name is Mark Neener. I'm the Supervisor of Active Transportation Planning with Public Works. Thank you for the opportunity to present on the Peninsula South Complete Streets project today. Today, I'm going to take you through some background on the planning project, an overview of the recommended complete street concepts, the benefits of each of those concepts, as well as key implications, and finally, a few points on implementation. And you'll find more information on all aspects, on all these aspects in the staff report in your package for today's meeting. Next slide, please. So Chris, I've got some animations on this, so I'll just have to
Yeah, just say next, and we can advance.
Okay. So next, please. So next again. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Okay. So the Peninsula South Complete Streets project is a functional planning project, and one of the primary objectives is to plan new all ages and abilities cycling infrastructure as part of an east-west corridor in the south end of the peninsula, as well as to plan for a AAA cycling connection from University Ave down Robie Street to connect to the St. Mary's University campus. So, so this east-west connection is an important kind of spine in the AAA network for the peninsula, and would connect to several existing and planned north-south cycling routes, including the bikeway on Lower Water Street and the existing segment of the Halifax Urban Greenway. Next, please. The existing protected bike lane on Hollis Street. Next. The Vernon Seymour Local Street Bikeway. Next, please. The existing protected bike lanes on South Park Street. Next, please. And the existing multi-use pathway on Dalhousie's Sexton campus that connects Morris Street up to Spring Garden Road, which will eventually connect to the bidirectional bikeway plan for Brunswick Street. We're also looking to connect this new cycling infrastructure to the institutions along the corridor. So this includes Dalhousie's 3 campuses, the Studley, Carleton, and Sexton campus, as well as the hospitals. Next, please. The hospitals and connecting to the waterfront and to downtown Halifax. As per direction from the Integrated Mobility Plan, we applied a complete streets approach to this project, which means that we were looking to improve conditions for other users, not just cyclists, primarily looking for opportunities to improve comfort and safety for people walking. And then finally, we also time for this segment due to some planning for transit priority on Robie Street to Inglis that's currently underway, which will integrate an AT facility into the cross section for Robie. Next, please. Next. I'm sorry, I think we skipped over one slide. Krista, can you go back one to the policy rationale slide? Great, thank you. So this, the objectives of this project advance policy and actions in the Integrated Mobility Plan, the 2014 AT Priorities Plan, and also support several other HRM plans, policies, and actions, including the Regional Plan, the Strategic Road Safety Framework, Halifax, the Local Street Bikeway Admin Order, and the Halifax Common Master Plan. Next, please. So we initiated the planning process for this project in 2019. We had our first round of public engagement in the fall of that year. Following that, we, based on that input from the first round of engagement, we developed a number of concepts for the various segments of the project. And some of those concepts we brought forward for public engagement phase 2 in the summer of 2022. The what we heard summary reports for those 2 phases of engagement, as well as all of the engagement materials and online videos and interactive map that we developed for those engagement phases are all available on the project's Shape Your City page. And I've included the link here on the slide. And throughout the project, we also engaged extensively with our internal stakeholders through the project technical committee, which involved representatives from all HRM business units, as well as our stakeholders in the community. Next slide, please. Early in the project, we developed an evaluation framework that was intended as a tool to help inform decision making. We identified the list of criteria that you see listed on the screen, and we added weights to those based on the IMP Complete Street hierarchy. So throughout the project, as we developed concepts, we scored them against these criteria, and we used those scores to inform decisions about which concepts we would take forward to the public and which concepts we would eliminate from further consideration. Next slide, please. So I'll now speak to the recommended concepts for each of the segments, starting with University Avenue, which is the central kind of core of this east-west corridor. We developed 3 concepts and evaluated them and shared all 3 of those concepts during phase 2 engagement in 2022. Next slide, please. So the recommended concept is concept 2B, which proposes to add a 2-way separated bikeway to the center median of University Ave. So that would extend from Lamarchand Street all the way to South Park Street. We're also proposing changes at 3 of the local streets west of Roby. So that would be Seymour, Henry, and Edward Street. That would restrict vehicle movements across the median to minimize conflicts with cyclists crossing those streets that are using the bikeway. This concept maintains the existing on-street parking. It would require the removal of approximately 23 of the 326 street trees along the street, and we would aim to replace those. And given that many of those trees are mature trees, we'd be looking to reinvest the value of those mature trees in the planting of new trees. So it would be more than a one-to-one replacement of trees within University Ave. We'd consider adding bike signals to minimize conflict between cyclists and other users where appropriate. We'd look to add new public spaces and placemaking, which we'd integrate into the design during the preliminary and detailed design phase. The cost estimate with a 35% contingency for this concept at a 30% design phase is $8.6 million. Next slide, please. So some benefits of the recommended concept include the widening of sidewalks along University Ave, which are currently undersized for the high volume of pedestrians that use the street, especially near the Dalhousie buildings. The median bikeway avoids conflicts with curbside loading and driveway access. It places a wide green buffer between the bikeway and adjacent vehicle traffic. There's minimal impacts to transit, emergency services, and on-street parking because the new infrastructure would be placed largely within the median. And it's also the lowest cost and complexity of the three concepts that were considered. Next slide, please. So some of the key implications of the changes related to the recommended concept, because the proposed bikeway would be in the median, cyclists that are starting or ending out their trip on University Ave would have to cross the vehicle lanes to access destinations on University Ave. We aim to mitigate this by providing as many crossings for both pedestrians and cyclists, where there are desired crossings to access origins and destinations along the street. There's also the potential for conflicts with cyclists if people choose to walk and roll in the median bikeway. There's the impacts to the urban forest that I already mentioned, the removal and replacement of 23 trees. There'd be an impact to the green space in the center of median as we'd be adding a bikeway to that space, a 3-meter bikeway, and also a potential for conflicts between cyclists and people that may be using the space for leisure recreation. Although, as I mentioned previously, we would look to integrate some public spaces and placemaking features into the design of the bikeway. So that would include adding amenities for pedestrians and people using the median space outside of the proposed bikeway. The proposed median restrictions west of Robie could result in more U-turning traffic at Lamarchand and Robie Street, and also would mean sort of less convenient access across the median for vehicles, including Dalhousie operational vehicles. Next slide, please. So now looking at the east connection, so that's the connection from University Ave and South Park down to the waterfront. We looked at 3 route options to achieve this connection and evaluated 10 concepts. The only viable AAA concept was shared during phase 2 public engagement, and that's the concept I'm going to speak to now. Next slide, please. So the recommended concept is concept 1A, which would add a 3-meter two-way raised bikeway to the north side of Morris Street. We would look to widen sidewalks to 2 meters where space permits. This concept requires converting Morris Street to one-way eastbound for traffic to free up space to add that new infrastructure on the north side. So this would mean changes to the existing transit service on Morris Street and possibly other changes in the area. There would be up to 4 of 55 street trees that would need to be removed and replaced. Although I think that number is likely to be lower than that. It retains parking, most of the parking on the south side of the street, with a net loss to the whole street of about 5 spaces. The north side of Morris Street would be signed no stopping except for approximately 6 spaces near South Park Street. And the cost estimate for this concept is $5.1 million. Next slide, please. So benefits of concept 1A for Morris Street is that it achieves the objective of the project, which is a direct and continuous bicycle route down to the waterfront from University Ave with favorable grades. The bicycle vehicle conflicts with the two-way bikeway are reduced with conversion of the street to one-way for traffic. It's a safer combination to put a two-way bikeway alongside one-way traffic as opposed to a two-way traffic condition. There'd be a wide treed and grass buffer separating the bikeway from the sidewalk. And as we've heard and learned from our accessibility experts and advocates in the community, this is the preferred separation between a raised bikeway and a sidewalk. We're proposing to remove the right turn channel at Queen Street, which would shorten the pedestrian crossing distance there and reallocate space to the pedestrian realm and also the off-street bikeway. This option maintains the location of the curb on the south side of the street, which means we can minimize impacts to mature trees. And it also, most of the on-street parking and 3 loading zones are maintained along the street. Next slide, please. So the key implications for the recommended concept are mostly related to converting Morris Street to one-way eastbound flow for motor vehicle traffic. Halifax Transit would consult riders and plan for changes to their network, which would likely result in removal of all service from Morris Street and other possible changes to the broader transit network. An alternate truck route to replace Morris Street as a westbound secondary daytime truck route would be required. And we did complete an assessment of alternate truck routes as part of this project, and we did consult with the Port Authority as part of that process. And the report recommends an alternate route following English Street and is described in more detail in the report. The conversion would result in diversion of traffic to adjacent streets, but 2 separate analyses of potential impacts to the traffic network concluded there's sufficient capacity in the local network to adapt to the change. Nevertheless, the conversion would be a significant change to the network, both for motor vehicle traffic, for drivers, and for Halifax Transit. And those impacts are described in more detail in the report. Next slide, please. And finally, looking at the west connection. So this is the connection from University Ave and Lamarchant, where the median bikeway on University would terminate, and looking to connect that down to the Halifax Urban Greenway, which currently ends at Oxford and South. We explored 3 possible route options for this connection and evaluated 3 concepts. And we took 2 top-ranking concepts to public engagement during the summer of 2022. Next slide, please. The recommended concept for the west connection is the local street bikeway option that would follow Seymour Street to South Street and then crossing to Carteret and Oakland Road down to Beaufort. So this would be a shared lane situation where cyclists would share the road with vehicles in a on low volume, low speed streets. We'd add a short section of protected 2-way bikeway on South Street to connect Seymour Street to Carteret. Wayfinding and pavement markings to identify the route would be part of the would be included in the design process. Traffic calming measures would be considered during the preliminary design phase of the project. We already have speed tables on Oakland Road, but we'd be looking, we'd consider the addition of additional traffic calming for other segments. We'd also consider additional crossing treatments to prioritize people walking and cycling, to connect these various segments. So, for example, to help cyclists cross from the South Street Bikeway to Carteret, and then also cross from Oakland Road, cross Beaufort to the Halifax Urban Greenway. And the cost estimate for this option is 1.2 million. Next slide, please. So benefits to this option include achieving the objective of a connection to the Halifax Urban Greenway with minimal impacts to trees, transit, vehicle traffic, and on-street parking. Grades along the routes are favorable for cycling, and traffic volumes are low. We've already got traffic calming measures in place on Oakland Road. And through the process, we also identified the opportunity to extend the proposed Oakland Road Local Street Bikeway to Robie Street, which would provide a connection to the planned AT facility on Robie and also the gateway entrance to Goresbrook Park. Next slide, please. Key implications to consider for this option include the fact that the proposed route does not provide direct access to Dalplex and other Dalhousie campus destinations west of Carteret Street, and would be a less direct route for cyclists who are arriving from or traveling to the north compared to the other concept, which included a facility on South Street all the way to Oxford. There are no impacts to trees or traffic expected with this concept. There would be a shift required in one bus stop on South Street, and minimal, if any, impacts to parking are expected. Next slide, please. So this image illustrates the proposed east-west network as per the recommendations in the report. It shows the University Ave Morris Street east-west spine and the recommended west connection. Next, please. And if we overlay the existing AAA facilities, we see, how the network for this part of the peninsula really starts to come together and connects existing facilities, with this continuous east-west corridor. Next slide, please. And finally, a few points on implementation. Pending TSC and Regional Council approval, the recommended options would proceed to preliminary and detailed design. The addition of the proposed bicycle infrastructure would be integrated with the planned recapitalization of University Ave and Morris Street. There's a significant amount of work required on those streets to repair existing infrastructure and also upgrade and install what are now, standard accessibility features, such as tactile plates at curb cuts and other features that would improve pedestrian accessibility and safety along the street. Construction wouldn't begin for at least 2 years and would be completed in phases over 2 to 3 years, with a target to complete construction by 2028. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Mason, would you like to put that on the floor?
Would I ever? I move that the Transportation Standing Committee recommend that Halifax Regional Council 1 approve the installation of bike facilities and related changes on University Avenue from Lemarchant Street to South Park Street as described in the discussion section of the staff report dated July 29th, 2024. 2, subject to the approval of recommendation 1 above, approve the use of the Peninsula South Streetscaping Design Guidelines as a guide for the implementation of the public realm improvements along University Avenue. 3, approve the installation of bicycle facilities and related changes in Morris Street from South Park Street to Lower Water Street, including conversion of Morris Street to a one-way eastbound for motor vehicle traffic as described in the discussions section. 4, approve the installation of bicycle facilities and other related changes to Seymour Street, University Avenue to South Street, Seymour Street to Carteret Street, Carteret Street and Oakland Road, Roby Street to Beaufort Avenue, as described in the discussion section. So move.
Is there a seconder?
Oh, yeah. So I'm just getting my mic on there. I'll second that.
Awesome. Thanks, Councillor Cuddle. Seconded. Go ahead, Councillor Mason. And actually, just before, do we have quorum?
It's
We
3. So if Sean's still
Okay,
on,
we're
we should
good.
have one more.
Yeah, we're just following up with Councillor Clary to see if he's rejoining the meeting, but he has exited as well as Councillor Lovelace.
So we do have quorum?
We do.
Okay, perfect. Go ahead, Councillor Mason.
So this has been a long time coming. This is one of the key pieces of the AAA network. We've done a reasonably okay job of doing north-south connectors, and we've done a pretty poor job of getting east-west connectors. So I'm glad to see this one happening in Almond Street under construction today. I have strong support for the east and central components. Funnily enough, historically, many neighbors in the Schmidtville area have actually asked, why don't you make it one way so you can cut down less trees and effectively traffic calm the neighborhood, because the amount of traffic Morris has been taking had become a concern. So I think that I don't see, I mean, some people I'm sure will be disappointed, but certainly there's support for that historically. The putting the multi-use path down the center of University Avenue, though I have some questions about both of these, I think is a good way to address the conflict we've had. What's delayed this project for so long is what to do in that section in front of the hospitals, which I'll talk about in a second. And I have some concerns about the west, but I think my my amendment can address that. So I'll go through those really quickly. On University Avenue, we've Nova Scotia Health Authority has been really clear they don't want to lift the parking and put in bike lanes there. And, you know, there's arguments for and against their stance, but that's their stance, and I accept that. And when you have a median that wide, I think that putting in a multi-use path there is acceptable and appropriate, and we'll still be able to have the, if you actually look how they function when they're being used as green spaces, there's a couple of, we put picnic tables in about 8 years ago, and there's a couple of new benches and stuff, but they're all easily on the edges of the medians. So I think that that will be okay. On the Morris Street side, you know, one of the things that's been a big concern is both planting trees and how many trees we're going to cut down. And I have a question about that when we get to the end, but I think the one way could work. One thing that's changed in the last number of years in that stretch from Sackville, Spring Garden, Clyde, and Morris and South is that Clyde is now two-way all the way from Queen Street to South Park, which it didn't used to be. You may remember it was one way when it was still called Brenton Place between Park Vic and the tower there, the Trillium. And so now that that's two ways, that gives us, should there be an emergency or should we need to divert buses or, there's now another way to travel. And I think that that helps give me confidence that Moore Street being one way, that there's alternatives on both South Street and Clyde in addition to Spring Garden Road. And then there was a question about the deferral and you know, a potential deferral. And part of why we created, and it was before my time, but part of why standing committees were created in the first place was because now this will be in the public until probably not even the next council meeting. This will probably be in the late September council meeting. So we'll have plenty of time for people to discuss this and feed back into council where we can make yet another decision. I do have my amendment, but I'm not going to make that now. I hope is there anyone else on the speakers list? I don't have the right
Not
thing.
that I see.
Okay, well, I will very quickly go through my questions after I'll put the amendment on the floor first, then I'll ask the questions, which is technically incorrect, but I'm sure the chair and the lawyer will allow it. So my amendment is 5, direct staff to prepare a staff report regarding the potential inclusion of the full South Street two-way raised bikeway concept 3A as a part of the Halifax Urban Greenway project when planning the construction of the Oxford Street facility connecting the Beaufort and Cobourg MUP. So that would be an amendment if that's friendly to Councillor.
I see
Second.
Councillor Cuddle. Oh, okay. I saw Councillor Cuddle's hand. Thank you.
So I'll speak to that very quickly, and then I'll come back and do my other questions right now. So we had some messages from cycle activists and advocates that the South Street should go all the way down as a protected bike lane, and staff aren't proposing that right now. And I think in the future, as the Halifax Urban Greenway gets built out, we'll see a lot of traffic coming from the Colt and down toward Flynn Park through there, and those people aren't going to bike down to Oakland and then circle back to get onto the bike lane. So you need, if you want people to use bike lanes, you have to have a direct route as possible. But we also don't have that right now. That part is probably 5 years away. If I'm 4, 5, 6 years away, building the Oxford component of that MUP. So to me, we should signal as a council and a committee that we would like that to be considered when that comes back, but that's future work for council and for staff. So I'd ask you to support that. My questions to staff right now are, Laura White asked about, will there be raised bike crossings or other protections for people crossing the traffic where in between the medians? Second question, I hope you're writing these down there, folks, is will we be able to close Spring Garden Road for events if we make Morris Street one way? Third question is, what is the plan for planting trees? We worried a lot about the mature trees, as we should, on Queen to South Park, but there's a real lack of street trees on the by the old hospital site now, Dalhousie, from Queen all the way to Lower Water. Like, there's very few trees, especially on the north side. So is a part of this, and I think it is, but I'd like to hear staff speak to it, that we'd get more trees. And then the final question is, can you talk a little bit about the improvements that would happen to the Morris and Queen intersection? Because that's been a dangerous intersection for some time. About 3 or 4 years ago, a student on his way to St. Mary's Elementary School got brushed by a car and an ambulance had to be called. The crossing guards don't like to use it. People push that slip lane all the time. The intersection is too wide. Either it needs signals or it needs to be completely redesigned. I hope that's part of this process. So those are my 4 questions, which aren't related to my amendment, but there you go.
Okay, well, we gave you some grace there, Councillor Mason. So do we have staff that can answer some of those questions? Thank you, Mark. I see you popped up. Go ahead.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. Through you to Councillor Mason. So with respect to the first question, raised crossings, I would say yes, those raised crossings for the bikeway and for ped crossings are something that we would consider in preliminary and detailed design. Where we're proposing restrictions across the median at the 3 local streets west of Roby, we are imagining that the bikeway would stay, at a single grade across those streets. So basically, we'd be extending the median sort of across those streets while maintaining emergency vehicle access across the median. So we'd be looking at raised, basically kind of at grade crossings for the bikeway there. And I think we'd also consider, other opportunities for raised ped and bike crossings. With regards to closing Spring Garden Road, I don't think transit, I think I'll have to defer this question to transit, because transit will have to plan the changes to their network that would result from converting Morris Street to one-way eastbound. So I think that's a question for Patricia. And I think she's kind of standing by to respond to that, but I'll move on to the tree planting question. So I think, as I mentioned, we'd look at the value of the trees that were removed, and we'd aim to, reinvest that value in planting new trees, either in the median if there's space, or elsewhere along University Ave or in the project area. And we'd work, I think we'd develop a planting plan as part of the design process, and collaborate with our colleagues in urban forestry to make decisions about where best to plant trees and what species to plant and so on. And then finally, the Morris and Queen Street intersection. So the proposal there, the bidirectional bikeway would cross Queen on the north side of Morris. The proposal is to remove the slip lane, which basically would mean that all of the space that's currently occupied by that little island plus the slip lane would kind of return to the public realm, the pedestrian realm on the north side of the street. We would need some of that space for the bikeway, but otherwise, I think there's an opportunity to plan and design for how that space gets used. And I think, I believe our colleagues in transportation planning are actually working on some ideas for a tactical intervention for that corner.
Fantastic, thank you. Is Patricia able to answer the other? There she is.
Hi, good afternoon. Patricia Hughes, the Director of Planning and Customer Engagement of Halifax Transit. Regarding closures of Spring Garden, I think that, anywhere in the municipality, it can be challenging when a street that bus routes are planned is closed for any reason, for an event or for construction or any cause at all. We do have limited options for detouring here, I would say. So our typical detour has been on to Morris if Spring Garden is closed. And if that's no longer an option, we would have to look at what options were available. And as stated in the staff report, I think the transit routing really needs, there's nothing finalized yet. We would need to do consultation and look at where the routes are going. So a bit complicated and hard to answer today, but we'll certainly have to look at where we would be able to detour.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Go ahead, Councillor Cuddle.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. So that does raise a question that I think hasn't been answered and that we might need to look at a bit more, is how could we reroute the buses? I mean, we look at Spring Garden Road, parades, for protests, for festivals, for events, and without knowing, it seemed very inconclusive what we were just told about what would be possible, and that there needs to be a study and there needs to be a report to look at that. To move ahead and approve this now without having those answers does, in my opinion, significantly change what's possible, what could be possible on Spring Garden Road. Like we don't know, we don't actually have the answer. So I'm just wondering, Mark, if you could talk about what would happen if we were to request a supplemental report on that. Would that, what impact would that have on the current plans right now?
I see Lucas Pitts has his hand up. Go ahead, Lucas.
Thank you. Sorry, Mark, I'll step in for this one. So one of the reasons we are here in front of committee right now, sorry, through the chair. One of the reasons we're here in front of committee right now is we are trying to, this project, as Councillor Mason mentioned, this project has been very delayed because of the engagement and trying to balance the trade-offs in a situation where everybody is not happy. Staff worked really hard to figure this out and provide, council with the best direction going forward. The AAA is targeted to be completed by 2028. Delaying this report now means that we cannot go into preliminary design this winter, and we end up not moving into preliminary design until the following winter. And so this would push the project into 2029, at the earliest.
So I guess my concern is that even if we were to ask for a supplemental report at this point, would we want to progress with all the planning if for some reason the supplemental report came back and we weren't satisfied? I'm just wondering about how is this issue of Spring Garden Road addressed so far by staff, and this question around the not being able to shut it down. I mean, was this considered? Was it looked at? And where is that?
Do we have staff who, Lucas, you want to take that one?
Yeah.
Great.
Sorry, thank you. Through the chair, well, I think the answer is like we've we've been in, you know, I've been at the HRM for 3 years, and I've been in probably 8 of these meetings, trying to work through the issues with University and Mortis Ave and the trade-offs. And we've known that it would have impacts on transit if the two-way the two-way cycle lane was chosen, the one-way Moore Street, and that, you know, it does take some time, as Patricia, and again, I don't want to speak for transit, so maybe they want to say some stuff, maybe they don't, but it does take some time pending council's direction to do that, right? And so we haven't spent the time to go through engagement and studies of what happens to the transit until we get the direction from council about what the preferred option here is when we're trying to balance these trade-offs. So.
Right. I understand. And then we're kind of in a catch-22 because we say yes and we proceed, and it's harder to undo. We say no, we don't proceed. It takes longer. I guess there's just, you know, a question here that we would like some answers to, or I would like some answers to, that don't seem to be available. So feeling very I know as soon as we say yes and it progresses, going back, it's like, well, we got council direction to proceed. So it's a difficult position to be in, to want to support the majority of this work, but not have the answer to a question that fundamentally changes one of our primary streets in the city, and you know, not having that consultation or that modeling or consideration done. Okay, I'm just going to leave it there and think about this for a minute. I see Councillor Mason has his hand up again.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Kettle. Go ahead, Councillor Mason.
I guess what I would say is this is part of why we have standing committees and then we go to council, is that we should ask staff to have a good hard look at that, and they're not going to have any final determination. But, you know, I feel like, you know, I like all the staff who are speaking today, so this is you know, kind of take this in the spirit it's intended. But I think there's an abundance of caution happening here. It's like, I don't want to say yes until I know for sure, and I get that. But we certainly close streets. Like, we're only adding 9 buses to Spring Garden Road. We close it right now. There are other streets. We may be talking about pushing buses to South Street, or probably not Sackville because of the grade and the turns and all that. But, you know, I think right now about, and as a regular transit user, what I'm enduring with the Cogswell being closed and how buses are going all around streets they would never not be on. You know, if staff could come back and give some level of comfort to council when we have the debate about this again, then that, you know, there is probably a path, or words to that effect, I think that would go a long way. But, you know, I also feel very uncomfortable at asking staff to spend oodles of money and time doing analysis on things until we start, like, we have to keep incrementally adding more direction before we spend more money on these kind of things. And so, you know, I guess that would be what I would ask staff. Can you guys put your heads together and we can have some additional level of comfort when we get to council?
Lucas, would you, or Mark?
No, we certainly can. I think, sorry, through the chair again. I think this might be a little bit more of a transit answer. Certainly from Public Works perspective, we are more than happy to make sure that we come back with as much information as we can for the council meeting. My colleagues from transit chime in here, and I see Mr. Rigi has his hand up as well.
All right, Dave, take it away.
Sure. Yeah, good afternoon, Dave Rigi, Executive Director, Halifax Transit. So what I would say is I think the risks and, you know, potential challenges for transit are well laid out in the report. It is very challenging for me to sit here and say everything will be okay, because I don't know. Like, that's the reality of where we are on this. Maybe it will be, but like, looking at, you know, changing detours and rerouting away from one of your busiest streets is not a minor exercise. That's kind of where we are. So, you know, like, I guess, like, that's a reality. Like, it may very well be we can filter buses elsewhere, but, you know, we're in a part of the city as well where not every right turn is physically possible in a bus, like, as an example. So, like, these are things we have to look at, and that will take time. I think that's where we are from the transit perspective.
Thank you. Thank you, David.
Question on the
Do we
amendment, I
have
guess.
on the amendment? Okay, I was going to speak too, if I could. Okay, thank you. So I'm really concerned about making these changes with all of the new changes that council has just voted into being. And one of those things is that housing accelerator amendments that we just voted in, council voted in May, that as of right now, we have almost 200,000 units going up, not to mention the special planning areas that the province has just announced. Once these infrastructure changes are made to narrow streets, make turning more difficult, restricting vehicle movements across intersections, etc., you can't easily reverse these things. And we're inviting in, hundreds of thousands of more people into our municipality in the next how many years. So I'm really concerned. I really feel like we need to take a sober second look at these policies that council has voted in, the council prior to the one that I'm on right now. One of the risks, or one of the impacts noted from the report, is that there's no easy alternatives for the accommodations of oversized loads. Like, that's our truck traffic. That's really important for our people. Like, that's our goods, that's our products, that's our food. So, and the transit issues that have been raised today, very, very concerning. I also was wondering too, just on this is probably a nothing, but our data that was provided in the report, the bike data was from 2023, but the car data was from 2019. And I'm sure that if we were to take the car data from 2023, like the bike data, we would see the car increase over year over year. And Lucas, I see your hand up there for that. But we're talking 3,000 cars daily east of Roby and 6,000 cars daily west of Roby from 2019, and compared with like 82 bikes daily. I really feel like the IMP needs to be reassessed with all of the changes that our city is going through. We have our mature trees that, of course, we received so much correspondence on the concern from residents on this 2 years ago. What are the chances that more mature trees are going to be destroyed through this construction period, even though it's not intended, of course, but that the risk is there. The risk in the report, there's a risk to vulnerable road users with this report. We know from feedback from residents and vision impaired residents that the multi-use pathways are not ideal. They can cause high risk and danger. We heard from one of our public participants today actually on that. There's a risk to resilience to the roadway network. There's a risk to the conversion of the one-way street. And the assumption of this report is that Spring Garden Road will be a transit-only street. That hasn't even come to council yet for consideration. So I just, all that to say, I don't think I can support this right now, and I would be very willing to support a deferral or a supplemental if that would cause this to slow down. And okay, I think I'm done speaking now. And Lucas, I see your hand is raised, so go ahead.
Through the chair, I just wanted to provide you with some information. So the reason 2019 traffic data was chosen was it was pre-COVID. So 2020, 21, 22, pretty much traffic volumes were a lot less than they were in 2019. 2023, depending on where you look, we're normalizing back to 2019 data. So there isn't much difference as of right now. 2024 data certainly might be different, but that's the reason 2019 is the more appropriate data there. On the tree cover, we, again, hard decisions here. Staff appreciated the impact of the mature tree cover, and all the options chosen have the least impact on the mature tree cover, and that was a huge part of the decision making.
Thank you for that, Lucas. Okay, so I don't see any other questions in the chat. Call for the question. Oh, yes, go ahead, Councillor Cuddle, go ahead. You're muted.
Yeah, okay, there we go. So just some clarity. I on Councillor Mason asked that if this proceeded to council, that we would have some more information. What I heard from Mr. Rigi was that this was complicated and it was a lot of work. So I'm unclear if we will have any more information if we go to council about the impact on Spring Garden Road and the buses or not. Like I wasn't clear if we were going to have more information.
Oh, Patricia, I see you popped up there.
Maybe I'll try this one. Thanks. So I think there's two things related to transit service. One is, where would things be rerouted permanently? We won't know that, right? Where the Route 90 is going to go, where the expresses go. That would take public consultation and would be a whole other endeavor, which we wouldn't have the information on for council. I think the question was more specifically about detours and if the Spring Garden's closed for any reason. And I think it's important to just keep in mind that transit would be one part of that. So when a street needs to close for any reason, like if there's impacts on transit, that's often significant, but that's only one part of a decision to close a road or for how long or the duration of how that construction works. What I would say is, we have other detours coming up that are challenging as well, where there's limited options for transit service, and there's something coming up in a few weekends that I know is going to have a big impact because there's just no turns we can make in the area. So Spring Garden closures will be more challenging for transit because Morris will no longer be an option, but we may be able to detour on South Street. There may be other options, but I think that each time a detour is needed or each time a closure is needed for either construction or events, we would evaluate the duration, the time of day, what the impact is. It's different if it's rush hour when there's express services versus if it's a Sunday morning closure versus if it's an evening event. So we wouldn't be able to come back with exactly where buses are going. So I think the transition of Morris Street to one-way removes an option for detours. It doesn't mean it's impossible. And we would look at it on a case-by-case basis, if that helps.
Okay, that does help, and I think when this comes to council, if we can be prepared to talk about that a little more, and any additional information you might be able to provide, I think that would be useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cuddle. I don't see any more questions in the chat. Someone would like to call for the question?
And this would be for voting on the amendment.
This would be
Question
for the
on the
amendment.
amendment.
All right. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? One. Okay, so the amended motion. Do we have any questions on the amended motion?
Question on the amended motion.
Question's been called. All in favor on the amended motion, signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Nay. All right. And that motion has passed. And that moves us on to number 14. Motions, we have none. In camera, we have none. Added items, I don't think we do. I can't see my screen. I don't think we have any. Clerk? No, we do not. All right. And then moving on to notices of motion. Do we have any members with a notice of motion? Yes, we do. Councillor Cleary. The floor is yours. I don't see him. Is he here? Did we lose him? Oh, there he is.
I'm back.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Cleary.
My laptop got disconnected from my phone, so I'm on my phone. I didn't quite catch why you were calling on me. What?
Oh, you have a yep in the chat. I asked if anyone had a notice of motion.
No, that was the clerks
That
were
he was
saying who was present.
Oh, sorry. Okay, gotcha. We are moving right along then. So I don't think we have any notices of motion. The date of our next meeting will be October 2nd, 2024, if required. And we require a mover to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion received. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your summer day.
Thank you for letting me sit in.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you. Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
All right. Congratulations, Mark.